Have you ever wondered why the men in your life seem to operate on a completely different wavelength? What if I told you that understanding male development could revolutionize every relationship you have with men, whether romantic, professional, or familial? Today, we're diving deep into Alison Armstrong's groundbreaking work that's been quietly transforming relationships for decades. I've read thousands of books as a professional editor, but few have challenged my fundamental understanding of human nature quite like the amazing development of men. This isn't another relationship advice book filled with tired cliches about men being from Mars. This is a scientific exploration of how men actually develop psychologically, emotionally, and relationally throughout their lives. Armstrong spent years researching and interviewing men to uncover patterns that most of us completely miss. What she discovered will shock you. The way men process emotions, handle stress, and approach relationships isn't random or stubborn behaviour. It's actually part of a predictable developmental sequence that unfolds over decades. Think about the last time you felt completely frustrated with a man's response to something important. Maybe your partner shut down during a serious conversation, or a male colleague seemed to dismiss your ideas without consideration. What if those behaviours weren't personal attacks or character flaws, but natural expressions of where that man currently sits in his developmental journey? This book summary will reveal the hidden architecture of male development, giving you practical tools to navigate relationships with unprecedented clarity and compassion. We're about to explore insights that could transform how you interact with every man in your life. The Amazing Development of Men. Expanded, second edition represents Allison Armstrong's decades of research into understanding how men grow and change throughout their lives. Unlike traditional relationship books that focus on surface-level behavioural tips, Armstrong delves into the fundamental psychological and emotional development patterns that drive male behaviour from adolescence through old age. Armstrong's background as a researcher and relationship educator brings scientific rigour to what many consider purely anecdotal observations about men. She conducted extensive interviews with men across different age groups, socioeconomic backgrounds, and life experiences to identify consistent developmental themes. The expanded second edition includes updated research and additional insights gathered from her continued work with thousands of men and women. The book challenges readers to abandon preconceived notions about male behaviour and instead view men through a developmental lens. Armstrong argues that many relationship conflicts stem from misunderstanding where a man currently sits in his growth journey. What appears to be stubbornness or emotional unavailability often reflects natural developmental processes rather than character defects. Armstrong introduces the concept that men progress through distinct phases of development, each with unique characteristics, challenges, and gifts. Understanding these phases allows women to respond more effectively to male behaviour, while supporting rather than hindering male growth. The book emphasises that men don't develop linearly or at the same pace, making individual assessment crucial for successful relationships. The work draws from developmental psychology, anthropology, and Armstrong's proprietary research methodologies. She presents complex psychological concepts in accessible language while maintaining scientific credibility. The book serves multiple audiences, including women seeking better relationships with men, professionals working with male clients, and men wanting to understand their own development. This expanded edition addresses criticism of the original work while incorporating new findings about modern masculinity challenges. Armstrong acknowledges cultural shifts affecting male development while maintaining the underlying biological and psychological patterns remain consistent. The book positions itself as a practical guide for navigating male psychology rather than an academic treatise. Armstrong's central thesis revolves around the idea that men progress through predictable developmental stages that significantly impact their behaviour, priorities, and relationship capacity. She identifies specific phases that men typically experience, though not necessarily in strict chronological order or at uniform paces. These developmental stages influence how men approach work, relationships, personal growth, and life challenges. The book explores how modern society often misunderstands or actively works against natural male development processes. Armstrong argues that cultural expectations frequently push men toward behaviours that contradict their developmental needs, creating internal conflict and relationship difficulties. She emphasises that supporting male development benefits everyone involved rather than just the men themselves. Armstrong introduces the concept of developmental regression and progression, explaining how men can move backward or forward through stages based on life circumstances, stress levels, and support systems. This fluidity challenges linear thinking about personal growth while providing hope for positive change. She demonstrates how women can recognise developmental shifts and adjust their responses accordingly. The work extensively examines how male development affects romantic relationships. Armstrong explains why certain relationship dynamics emerge at different developmental stages and how partners can work with rather than against these natural processes. She provides specific strategies for supporting male growth while maintaining healthy boundaries and personal needs. Armstrong addresses common misconceptions about male emotional capacity and communication styles. She reveals how men process emotions differently based on their developmental stage and explains why traditional communication and approaches often fail with men. The book offers alternative methods for connecting with men that honour their developmental needs while fostering genuine intimacy. The book also explores how male development impacts professional relationships, parenting dynamics, and friendships. Armstrong demonstrates that understanding male development creates more effective collaboration in all contexts, not just romantic partnerships. She provides tools for recognising developmental stages in various men and adapting interaction styles accordingly. Throughout the work, Armstrong emphasises that male development is neither superior nor inferior to female development patterns, but represents a different pathway toward maturity and fulfillment. The book's foundation rests on Armstrong's identification of distinct male developmental phases that shape behaviour and relationship capacity throughout life. She begins by establishing that men don't simply mature chronologically, but progress through psychological and emotional stages that can occur at various ages. The first major phase Armstrong identifies is the page stage, where young men focus primarily on learning skills, gaining competence, and proving themselves worthy of advancement. During this phase, men typically prioritise achievement over relationships and may appear emotionally distant or overly focused on external validation. Armstrong's research reveals that men in the page phase often struggle with intimacy because their developmental energy is directed toward mastering their environment rather than exploring emotional connections. This insight explains why young men might seem self-absorbed or uncommitted in relationships. The author emphasizes that this behavior isn't selfish, but represents necessary developmental work that prepares men for future relationship success. The night phase represents Armstrong's second major developmental category, where men become focused on quests, missions, and causes larger than themselves. Men in this phase develop strong convictions and may become intensely dedicated to career advancement, social causes, or personal achievements. Armstrong explains that night phase men often make devoted partners but can become obsessed with their missions to the detriment of relationship maintenance. Understanding this phase helps partners recognise that apparent neglect often stems from developmental drives rather than a lack of caring. Armstrong's description of the night phase includes detailed analysis of how mission-focused behaviour affects romantic relationships. She explains that night phase men may struggle to balance their quest orientation with partnership needs, leading to conflict unless partners understand the developmental dynamics at play. The book provides strategies for supporting night phase men while maintaining relationship health. The Prince phase represents Armstrong's third developmental category, characterised by men's growing comfort with power and leadership while developing greater emotional sophistication. Prince phase men typically demonstrate increased relationship capacity and begin integrating their achievement drives with interpersonal skills. Armstrong describes this phase as often coinciding with career success and greater self-confidence, making Prince phase men attractive partners, but sometimes challenging due to their growing comfort with authority. Armstrong's analysis of the Prince phase explores how men at this developmental level approach mentorship, leadership, and relationship dynamics differently than men in earlier phases. She explains that Prince phase men often become more generous and supportive, but may also become more demanding of excellence from others. Understanding these dynamics helps partners and colleagues navigate relationships with Prince phase men more effectively. The King phase represents Armstrong's most advanced developmental category, where men achieve integration of their various capacities and develop wisdom-based leadership styles. King phase men typically demonstrate emotional maturity, relationship sophistication, and the ability to balance multiple priorities effectively. Armstrong presents this phase as representing optimal male development, while acknowledging that not all men reach or maintain this level consistently. Armstrong's exploration of the King phase includes analysis of how these men approach relationships, work, and personal growth with increased wisdom and emotional intelligence. She explains that King phase men often become exceptional partners and leaders, but may face unique challenges related to their expanded responsibilities and the expectations others place upon them. The first crucial takeaway from Armstrong's work is that male behaviour often reflects developmental positioning rather than character flaws or intentional inconsideration. When a man appears emotionally unavailable or overly focused on work, understanding his developmental phase provides context that can transform frustration into compassion. This perspective shift allows women to respond more effectively while avoiding unnecessary conflict over behaviours that stem from natural developmental processes. Understanding developmental phases enables more strategic relationship timing and approach. Women can recognise when a man is ready for deeper commitment versus when he needs space to complete important developmental work. This knowledge prevents wasted energy trying to force relationships that aren't developmentally aligned, while identifying opportunities for genuine connection when timing is optimal. Armstrong's research reveals that supporting male development benefits everyone involved rather than just the men themselves. When women understand and support their partner's developmental needs, relationships become more harmonious and fulfilling for both parties. This support doesn't mean sacrificing personal needs, but rather working with natural processes instead of fighting against them. The book demonstrates that different developmental phases require different communication strategies and relationship approaches. What works with a knight phase man may be completely ineffective with a prince phase man, and vice versa. Learning to identify developmental indicators and adjust interaction styles accordingly dramatically improves relationship success across all contexts. Armstrong's work shows that men can regress or progress through developmental phases based on life circumstances and support systems. This fluidity means that positive change is always possible, while also explaining why previously mature men might temporarily exhibit less developed behaviours during stressful periods. Understanding this dynamic prevents catastrophizing temporary setbacks while encouraging long-term growth. The research reveals that modern society often works against natural male development processes, creating unnecessary conflict and confusion. Cultural expectations frequently push men toward behaviours that contradict their developmental needs, leading to internal stress and relationship difficulties. Recognising these cultural pressures allows for more realistic expectations and targeted support strategies. Armstrong demonstrates that male emotional processing differs significantly from female patterns, particularly regarding timing and expression methods. Men often need more time to process emotions internally before expressing them externally, and they may prefer different communication contexts than women assume. Respecting these differences improves emotional intimacy and reduces misunderstandings. The book reveals that developmental awareness improves professional relationships and workplace dynamics, not just romantic partnerships. Understanding where male colleagues or employees sit developmentally enables more effective leadership, collaboration, and conflict resolution. This knowledge proves valuable for anyone working closely with men in professional contexts. Armstrong's research shows that patience and strategic support during developmental transitions can accelerate positive growth, while forced pressure often creates resistance or regression. Recognizing when a man is naturally transitioning between phases allows supporters to provide appropriate encouragement without counterproductive interference. The final key takeaway emphasizes that male development continues throughout life rather than stopping at a predetermined age. Men can continue growing and developing new capacities well into their later years, making investment in understanding and supporting male development a lifelong endeavour with ongoing rewards. The Amazing Development of Men Expanded, 2nd edition, fundamentally challenges how we understand and interact with the men in our lives. Armstrong's research-based approach provides a scientific foundation for observations that many women have made intuitively but couldn't quite articulate or address effectively. By viewing male behaviour through a developmental lens rather than judging it through female developmental expectations, we open possibilities for dramatically improved relationships and communication. The book's greatest strength lies in its practical applicability across various relationship contexts. Whether dealing with romantic partners, professional colleagues, family members, or friends, understanding male developmental phases provides valuable insights for navigation. Armstrong's work moves beyond generic relationship advice to offer specific strategies tailored to different developmental stages and individual circumstances. Perhaps most importantly, this book offers hope for positive change in relationships that might otherwise seem stuck or problematic. Instead of viewing challenging male behaviours as permanent character flaws, Armstrong's developmental framework suggests that growth and improvement remain possible throughout life. This perspective encourages patience and strategic support rather than frustration and ultimatums. The expanded second edition addresses contemporary challenges facing men while maintaining focus on underlying developmental patterns that transcend cultural shifts. Armstrong acknowledges that modern masculinity faces unique pressures, while arguing that fundamental developmental needs remain consistent. This balance makes the work relevant to current relationship challenges while providing timeless insights. For readers willing to challenge their assumptions and invest in understanding rather than changing the men in their lives, this book offers transformative potential. The developmental approach requires patience and strategic thinking, but promises more satisfying relationships and improved communication outcomes. Armstrong's work ultimately suggests that understanding male development isn't just about accommodating men, but about creating conditions where everyone can thrive and grow together.